Yeah, so can you tell me a little bit about what this project is meant to be about?
So it was an exploration of using fungus as a system,
Mhm.
um, and largely about trying to get 2,000 things into this array that I had built for many, many years. It started off as a game ideas generator project, so they're very diverse. It drew from a project that I had many years ago, but 300 short stories.
Mhm.
So about 150 of them like are actual stories.
Oh, wow.
Trying to see if I can find a GIF of scrolling through all of the different things that it can be about. But
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's loop doesn't quite work because I ended what the dog was saying uh, without going through. Because the way that it works is essentially that there's a variable that's getting like ticked every single time you talk to them.
Mhm.
So the dreams have to be outside of that loop. But if you ask the questions, it follows through and then says, "Oh, we're done now." So
Well, I'm glad I restarted the game to get more of the. Like, it seems like that is the main thing, like an exploration of how the systems of fungus work, but then also this seems like the actual core of the experience.
yeah, because the way that fungus works is that you call animations.
Hmm.
So like it's a visual scripting language that also encompasses like a point and click adventure sort of system and then like hooking in and out of variables for code. So when I've never made a dialogue system and they seemed terrifying, so I was like, "Oh, well, I'll try and make something in this to try and make that work." So this was sort of my little tech demo of making sure that I could make that happen.
Yeah, nice. So is the list of possible things the dog can tell you about shuffled at the beginning, or is it just plucking them from random and there's just so many that there's a low chance of them repeating?
Low chance of them repeating.
Okay.
So this was about a week of time that I spent doing this, and had a fun conversation of people being like, "Well, you can't put everything in your array just hard coded. You should be doing it this way." And I was like, mm, "Copying and pasting thousands of things doesn't seem like the most efficient use of my week of time."
Hmm. So how is it actually put together then? Like what is it referencing?
um, I can if I take a screenshot and put it in Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll work. Because I'm just curious about like how is the data actually stored?
My terrible screenshot program. Okay. So in this Discord, what is the best channel for that?
Oh,
Stream chat?
yeah, that would work.
So the basic interface is kind of like a flowchart.
Hmm.
Um, and then on the right, you can kind of see the like different call blocks that sort of get referenced as you go through these things. But so the way that the dog works in particular is that um, the random dialogue is constantly running, choosing new pieces. So it
Hmm.
sort of exits its dialogue tree to then say that thing so that it doesn't go through this sort of if statements, which is kind of in this experimentation a limitation of the like program itself. There's definitely ways of working around it,
Hmm.
but for the amount of time that I had, I was like, seems seems like a lot to work out a kink in a system that I'm not entirely sold on. I do like it. In terms of a dialogue manager, I'm on their Discord. It's quite a small community. It
Hmm.
was part of the Unity asset store and is no longer. So
Oh,
it's like a git download, um, and then sort of this online community that upholds it, updates it.
nice. So you mentioned having limited time to put this together. What was the time constraint on the project?
I was taking the Code Coven Intro to Game Making to remember how to do game stuff.
Okay.
So this was sort of the like final thing that I did. The vast majority of my time was tech demos, mainly because I am a strong believer in setting up a foundation that works before adding art assets.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, so all of the animations were sort of me just being like, and now I have time. These boxes can be things. So, uh, the I think most frustrating part of this was actually getting them to have things above their heads that would update
Hmm.
without necessarily being like getting them to disappear while they're talking and then reappear where they're not talking.
Right.
If you look at the flowchart, everything flows back to one like fail-safe end block, which means that to call the animation states, you can't have them end animations within that block. So it has to reference the ending of that particular animation for that instance of the eye to do it. So everything's set up as the static animation that the characters do, a bouncing animation that they
Hmm.
do while they're talking, which is an anchor based scaling of
Hmm.
the sprites, so it's an empty, and then this eye animation that's attached to each of these, I guess, like subsections, these character empties. So they're all individually attached to each character rather than ending them all, because if anything's in the end block, then that's global. So
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's always fascinating to me to see like anytime there's some sort of like visual scripting system, because I just I'm so used to writing stuff in some kind of script. So seeing these systems, like I definitely see the appeal, but I think there was a GIF posted in our Discord a while back of like the how terrifying flowchart based programming looks to someone who's used to writing things with script.
yeah, I think like the main, because I've used a couple of other things. I've used Twine many, many years ago. I've used Yarn, which is Twine-esque. I use Fleece for work, but like the thought of building a dialogue manager from the ground up to be like to the specifications that I would want to do for like how I understand in my brain, it's like really, really old point and click adventure games where you can see someone's direct brain
Hmm.
in the logic systems of the world where you're like, okay, why does cat equal drawbridge open?
Yeah,
Because in this person's brain, cat equals drawbridge open, and that makes sense. And I feel like most visual scripting languages are in that vein to me of just like, this is clearly how one person's brain worked who started this project, and
yeah,
everything else after that just continues.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, but I guess so. This system fungus integrates with animations, and I can see that
Hmm.
there is like some logic that it can handle internally over on the side here. Um, I guess the way that I would probably want to wire something like this is to have the flags externally accessible by a different system that I could then read and write from on an event based setup. Because when you have like programming that's event driven, like the way you were describing um, the eye above the character's head changing color or appearing and disappearing, um, I would love to have a system like this that handles the dialogue, and then when the dialogue ends, it just throws a like dialogue finished event, and then something else listens for that and says, "Oh, the dialogue's finished. Okay, let's iterate through the conversation and see if there's any dialogue left. Okay, there is. Let's put up the white eye, or otherwise, let's put up the black eye, and then like on conversation start, listen for that event, and then hide the eye. and that's like something else can manage that system, which might be a little more robust than the like flowchart system here. And I can sort of lean on the strengths of this system to just handle the dialogue, and then lean on the strengths of whatever I can write for myself to handle other interactions.
I also put a more detailed view of what the call-based blocks look like. This sort of in the right, these colored variable stuff.
Yeah, okay. So it's got this big. So this one block, this is just one huge if and then else if statement.
Yeah, so like each one of these, the main starting blocks, every time you create an instance of, I guess, talking to them, it runs through what number am I on, as like every single time that you close a dialogue, it'll add to you've talked to this character one more time if it's like a full circle of concept or conversation. And then you sort of can, it's like there's two visual scripting languages basically in this, that like there's the flowchart aspect, and then there's this sort of like block system, which is basically an elaborate if else array of things.
So this looks like the newer version of Unity, but when you made this, were you still constrained by not being able to manually drag and reorder array elements?
I don't know.
Just because this ability to like click on a command and reorder its position is something that I think has been only recently added to the Unity interface, like possibly as of version, maybe not that recently. It depends on when this was made. But yeah, if it was made 53 days ago, then that's definitely functionality that's existed in the program.
Yeah, all of these are draggable. I'm currently on 2020.3.11F1.
Yeah, I think it was version 2020 that added the ability to click and drag to reorder array elements. Oh yeah, and then Dr. Tronic's mentioning using the Odin inspector, because that was one of the things that the Odin inspector could do that the default Unity inspector couldn't. Just you had to delete an element and then add it to the end and just rebuild everything. It's like, oops, did you get the order of it wrong? Too bad.
There's a little bit of that in this system where, like, particularly, and I mean, this is maybe just a Unity problem in general, like renaming an animation just like creates compounding work where like at one point I did a lowercase for someone's idol, and it's just like trickled down into being in complex, like, okay.
Yeah, it's surprising how the only way that I've seen to somewhat mitigate that issue is that if you're writing in actual C# script, at the very top of your code, you have a whole bunch of script that converts the string to a numerical hash, and then you just permanently reference that number, like number ID in your script, so that you never reference a animation by its actual name anywhere in your script except at the very beginning, where you're doing this like animation to ID call. So if you ever change it, you only have to change it in one place. It's not that hard to change that sort of thing if you use project-wide refactoring. But the main advantage is every time you are referencing an animation by its string ID, Unity is actually having to go do this like complex string lookup, and it's actually way more efficient to reference things by their ID. So for anyone watching who ever has to deal with the Unity animation system, I highly recommend going through the trouble of converting every animation to its constituent ID before you start handling them. But yeah, I can see in the bottom left corner here, this is what you were talking about with the integer that tracks the number of visits that you've made to each character.
So this is farther than where that sort of just tech demo sits a little bit more complex, as I was like, I like this project, I'll keep going. But so all of the random dialogues, like as the game plays, will just at 0.1 per second go through the array and try and figure out something. The main thing, yeah, just being that 2000 is a really big number, and if you get two of the same, the likelihood is just low enough that
Yeah, you're not likely to get to the exact same back to back.
yeah.
So how is the actual text stored in the game?
It's
Like, what
just
does
written
a
into the blocks themselves. So if you go sort of over, you'll see. Actually, I'm going to see if I can try and get a screenshot of this because it's a very complex amount of things that you can. No, it's. This is one thing that I hate about screenshotting on Windows is that it really just doesn't like to do it while you are also clicking something.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's like you can call all sorts of things. You can call animations, audio, camera, any collection that you might have, and then you're sort of like, here's just a say dialogue, so it's just the stuff that's written there, loading scenes, if statements, ending stuff, tweening between stuff, as well as like inputting different keys, math, like there's physics, all
Wow.
sorts of stuff that is like all in here, as well as doing like scripting. So whether or not that's like destroying an object or adding something to a inventory, it's quite robust, but also entirely within like that sort of one person's brain-esque territory.
Right. Like this made a lot of sense to someone.
Yeah, and
You
like
just
I think
gotta.
that there's been enough like folks who have taken this on as like a, you know, we like this project type of thing that it's gotten
Right.
pretty far, but it is a little bit of a trying to put yourself into the designer's shoes when thinking about it. So
Yeah. As for the question from Chief Beef here, Chief Beef 1337, I don't actually use Unity's WebGL, so I'm not sure if somebody else has more experience with that. But I've seen plenty of stuff published with the WebGL project, like export. So I don't see any sign of it being shut down. It seems like stuff's being published to WebGL. I know that they are planning on creating like some sort of project tiny or something along those lines that's like meant to be even smaller package sizes for WebGL exports, but I think that is been moving much slower than they necessarily were hoping, but that's probably just due to COVID and everyone having to switch over to remote work. And Unity's general habit of promising a million packages and then not finishing development of any of them. So in some ways, you're almost better off with a package like Fungus here, where there is just some small dedicated community that is going to keep making it work.
yeah, I find particularly, and this happens with Blender too, is that like one thing will get like hyper fixated on, and then they'll be like, here's all this other cool stuff that we're also kind of doing, and then that stuff just takes years, and you're like, but wait, what about the thing that you announced? Like, are you
Yeah.
going to support it? So
So the I can see like here you've got the like say blocks, and that's what's actually containing the text.
yeah.
So
As with, I find basically every dialogue manager that I've ever used, the unfortunate fact that it also doesn't have a spell check,
yeah,
and that you just have to make an external flowchart for it anyways, is still present here.
yeah, absolutely. And does it have any capacity to handle like variable text or even translations
Yes.
of things? Okay.
So the variable stuff is essentially what is happening for when the dog is dreaming stuff. It's just a global variable that's pulling from a script array. But
Okay, yeah.
from my understanding, from what I have seen on Discord at least, that translation is something that is also supported.
Okay, cool. Because yeah, I think it's really important to have if you ever want to support it, because if you write a text system, which Unity has a built-in system for supporting translation, and I've used it, and it's a little weird to get used to, but then it just works out of the gate. Um, but if it's not something that you're planning on using, you end up having to retouch everything in your project when you want to go back in and add support. So, from that perspective, it's very important to know that you have support for it from the get go, because otherwise, it would just be a whole lot of work you'd have to redo.
Yeah, I decided that I wanted to learn 2D animation in 2019, I guess, and I decided that I was going to learn using Unity's 2D packages.
Oh, yeah.
And everything that is sort of I'm glad that they support it, but I would not say that it is the most robust system that they have ever made. And I feel like that mostly about a lot of things that Unity does for its own version of stuff, where it's kind of like, you're a really big program and you do a lot of things, and I deeply appreciate that about you, but also sometimes you break the things that you've already made.
Mm-hmm. I keep trying to click on the dog, hoping for one of the aforementioned uh, longer conversations. Um, but I guess if it was like 150 out of 2,000. Oops.
Yeah.
So my chances of getting a one conversation like that are roughly 7%. Seems by my math.
Yeah, this is, how many lines is it? I think it's like 300 or 400 lines with about between 5 and 10 things on each line. So,
Oh my goodness. Wow. And it's incredible like how much of the actual content of this game is somewhat hidden. So like
that was sort of like, I deeply love my weird random generator that I've been working on for the past like 8 years, but it also, every time I put it into something, none of that work is seen. It's like, all right, press this button hundreds of times and maybe you'll get something.
Interesting. Yeah, I do also like the suggestion that came up earlier in chat, which was um, combining a bunch of the shorter ones together to like create
Yeah,
a procedural dream.
that's, so it's based off of a video game idea generator that I made, which, apologies for the family friendly show and my vulgarity in it, but I will put it in this, where it is a like genre game type about, so it's 3 things that it will generate if you just, it's very text based if you just run the tool.
Yeah, sure.
So that has like, by the basis of that combination, like millions of things that it can be about. But
I think I remember one time when I was traveling back in 2013 with some friends when we were in down in Austin, Texas, and we referenced a website called wherethefuckshouldideat.com.
it's very much in that vein. There was like a very particular moment of random generators that was like, what the fuck should this be? So like,
Yeah.
what should my next wearable be? My next website be? I also love this person who says that this website is made to be kid friendly. Where there's just a part of me that's like, you have vastly underestimated itch.io as a platform and what it is here for.
You must be thinking of coolmathgames.com. But
Mm-hmm.
no, itch.io is, I mean, I don't think they have many restrictions in terms of what they allow on the platform. So
No,
I can
there's
at least appreciate the fact that the people have reacted accordingly with the ratings.
yeah.
I don't know, like I this comment almost seems genuine, but I could almost imagine it just being like sarcastic, like, come on, no swearing.
Well, I like when I first got it, I read it as very genuine, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like I appreciate that you think that children need to think pure thoughts at all time or whatever, but like itch.io is like not the website that you think it is. If you think that this website is like entirely meant to be child friendly, it is a repository of people's art on a vast spectrum of types of art, some of which are not going to be children friendly, but
Yeah, like just because and like it's all well and good with the parts of it that you frequent are like wholesome and whatnot, but yeah, it's just when you don't give people restrictions on what kind of art they can upload, then they will upload all kinds of art, and some of it will not be considered safe for work, shall we say. Um, but yeah, so uh, with reference to the way that the conversations are stored, um, I guess you would have had to like copy out every single line of your story or of all the possible stories into these blocks.
no. So
Oh
I
my
sent
god.
a screenshot of what this file looks like. Um, and that's only a portion of it.
Huh?
So this is sort of why when people are like, well, you shouldn't just like hard code an array with all of these things in it. And I was like, I'm not copying these like point for point into a like, serialized field for
Mm-hmm.
this week-long project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but these are some of the like older or the longer ones, the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are at the bottom that
So what's the WC in braces there?
hard break for fungus to start a new panel on its
Okay.
dialogue.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely imagine building a tool that picks these out. I
Mm-hmm.
and anyone who watches the channel knows that I'm a huge fan of AutoHotkey, and you can use it to do stuff like that. Like you could train pretty easily write a hotkey that would grab the stuff out of here, break it down by the commas, and then one by one paste it into the inspector for you. Um,
Yeah,
but
that was like
again,
outside of my. I was like, I don't know how to code that. Everyone was like, you could do all these like fun things, and I was like, I don't know. That seems like I'm gonna be.
yeah, if it works, it works. And I guess I'm just unlucky in terms of not getting a. Oh no, hang on, I did. I literally just clicked away from the game as I got a longer one. Hmm. Hmm. Um.
This is why there's a content warning for this game where it's like some things get weird.
Oh, that's fine. Uh. Wait. Yeah, I mean, the Morpheus. I like. So how are these? Is this what we're seeing here? This is not um a file in Unity, is it? Like, what is this that we're actually looking at here?
So I use Sublime Text, so this is
Mm-hmm.
just like a very simple like okay, start array
Right.
and like a string, and then it just pumps out one single thing from this array.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then that variable is called once.
Right. Yeah, and this is all just sitting in a separate file that is referenced by the like get random
Yes.
dialogue. Yeah. Yeah. So it already is a resource in the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's all different kinds of approaches to getting something like this to work, and if you can find a way to
Mine was
do it
brute
with
force.
yeah, like but if it works though, like you can't argue with results. So in terms of like a larger scope project, you can always consult with someone who has an understanding of like, oh well, if you want this to not be a pain to deal with in the long run, then here are some suggestions for what you can do. But if you got it to work, that's what matters. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap things up there. But thank you so much for talking me through the project, and this was really neat.
Lovely to chat.
I do see it's a secret URL, so do you not want me to necessarily share that with the chat here, or?
You can. I never published it mainly because it's something that I wanted to keep working on, so I was fine with it just having a like send to people who want to see it, but not necessarily for like people just poking around on
Right.
itch.io.
Yeah,
So
not to stumble across it at random.
A bunch of people be like, "Your game's really short." Like, yes, thank you. It's a demo.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and discussing it with me. And if you ever have anything else, some other random generator that you want some feedback on, I'd be more than happy to take a look.
Yeah. Have a good afternoon.
Likewise. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.